Hi, Managerial Accounting. In this video, we're going to go over how to allocate and adjust for manufacturing overhead. You will learn that manufacturing overhead will be estimated. And the reason being is that the actual doesn't happen until the end of a period. So in order to get the records updated on time in a timely manner, they have to estimate the amount of overhead. So the first thing that I'm about to do is show you how to figure out the predetermined overhead rate. In this problem, you are going to figure out 4 different things. The first item that you will figure out is the predetermined overhead rate per direct labor hour. So in this problem, it's telling you that the cost basis is direct labor dollars. Okay? All right, so let's look at the cost of direct labor, the estimated direct labor cost. Okay, so let's go over to the board. All right, and we're just going to work from the figures. So the total overhead estimated cost for this problem is $125,000. Okay? Remember, that's the total estimated overhead cost. The denominator for this problem, all the problems will be different. So if I can't stress this enough, read the problem carefully. What are they saying the allocation base is? The allocation base could be direct labor hours. It could be direct labor cost. It could be machine hours. So the allocation base for this is the direct labor cost. Okay, so the direct labor cost in this particular problem is $78,125. Divide it out. Read the problem. Where are they saying to round? Okay, so this one comes out nice and neat as 1.60. There's your decimal, equals 160% as your percent. Okay? So your answer is either, depending upon what the lab is asking for, 1.60 or 160%. Okay? Requirement 2. Prepare the journal entry to allocate overhead costs for the year. Okay, so we first have to figure out the overhead costs. So I look back at the problem, and what do they say? Actual direct labor costs for the year. Okay, so let me go back here and let me stress this. I want you to think apples to apples. So when you're figuring the predetermined overhead rate, please take good notes because this is a common error. You will only use estimated. You will only use estimated. Never use actual when you're figuring out the predetermined overhead rate. Okay, so now you have the predetermined overhead rate. Well, now we need actual. So I look back at the problem, and what does it say? It says the actual direct labor cost for the year is $67,000. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to take 67,000 and I'm going to multiply it by, I like decimals, 1.60. Okay, so I multiply that out and that gives me 107,200. Okay, all right, now I have to make the journal entry to allocate the overhead costs for the year. So my journal entry will be work in process. This is my, so let me make this clear. This is my debit and then my credit. Let me put this over here. Okay. Work in, work in process Once I start working with you all a lot, we're going to use the acronym WHIP. But I'm first teaching, so I want to go through it. So it's 107, 200. That's your debit. Okay? Your credit is going to be manufacturing overhead. And that is 107, 200. Okay? And that is when you allocate overhead costs for the year. Okay, let me stop so you understand. Work in process is an asset account. You will increase it with a debit. You will decrease it with a credit. Please take notes on that. This is where debit and credit is going to come into play. You have to know that cold. Manufacturing overhead, again, take good notes, is an expense account. You will increase it with a debit. You will decrease it with a credit. Okay, so make sure you take good notes on that. All right, so now it says, number 3, use a T account to determine the amount of underallocated or overallocated manufacturing overhead. Okay, again, please pay close attention. I don't edit my videos, just so you know, so it is what it is. All right, so manufacturing overhead, your debit will be your actual, your credit will be your allocated. Just so you really understand, in managerial we use the word allocated, but just know it as estimated, okay, so that it's making sense to you. This first entry was an estimate. We don't know what the actual is yet. When we do, you will see we will debit manufacturing overhead. Okay? All right, so now I'm going to go back over here and I'm going to put in what I just did, my credit, 107, 200. Remember, that's my estimate. Now I look back at the problem. What did they say the actual manufacturing overhead is? Okay, they said the actual manufacturing overhead cost for the year is $116,000. Okay, so look at it. Your estimate was 107, 200. Guess what? You didn't estimate enough. You didn't estimate enough. Your actual was 116. So that means you've underallocated overhead. Underallocated overhead. Okay, take the difference between the two. The difference between the two is 8,800. All right, look at your T. What do you need to balance? You need to credit that. So when it's underallocated, you're going to credit manufacturing overhead because you need to add to that account. If it's overallocated, you'll do different problems in the homework, so make sure you're understanding. If it's overallocated, you will learn you will debit manufacturing overhead. Okay, so now the next requirement is prepare the journal entry to adjust the underallocated or overallocated manufacturing overhead. Well, we already know that it was underallocated. So here's what we're going to do. Requirement 4. We are going to kind of just bring my debit, credit. We are going to debit cost of goods sold. I'm going to call it COGS. That is cost of goods sold. When you work in the lab, you will pick cost of goods sold. So I debit cost of goods sold, 8,800, and I credit manufacturing overhead, 8,800. And that's it. We're done. So this problem I like because it makes you do every single piece. In the homework, I'm going to have different requirements, but I chose this problem to do a video on because it covers a lot of material. Okay? All right, I'll see you soon for other material. Get in that lab.